So my name's Eric, and this whole thing started when I was 27, just turned. I'd been back living with my parents for a little over a year. A bad breakup and a career change had really messed things up for me. It wasn't like I was lazy, believe me. I was working my butt off, a remote tech job during the day and bartending on weekends to make ends meet. I was paying rent, chipping in for utilities, buying groceries all the time, and even helping my younger brother, Dave, out when he goofed up and forgot to pay his credit card bill again. You'd think doing all that, being a responsible adult, would earn you a little respect, right? Wrong. My family. They're masters at twisting things around to make themselves look good. It all exploded one Sunday at dinner. We were all sitting down, me, my parents, Dave, and his girlfriend, and the air was thick, you could cut it with a knife. My mom kept giving me these glares like I was some piece of junk she wished she could return. I tried to pretend I didn't notice, just ate my food and hoped for the usual uncomfortable but quiet meal. Fat chance. Then, halfway through, she slammed her fork down, leaned back, and crossed her arms. Man, she just blurted it out loud enough to make Dave and his girlfriend choke on their food. "It's embarrassing," she yelled, "having a grown man mooching around here like he owns the place." I was so shocked I didn't even realize she was talking about me at first. I mean, Dave was still living there too and hadn't paid rent in ages, but she wasn't done. "You're nothing but a parasite," she spat, all curled lip and disdain. "You'll never amount to anything if you keep sponging off others." I was ready to fire back, honestly, but she just waved me off like I was a fly. "If you had any pride," she said, "you'd get out and build your own life instead of clinging to people who feel sorry for you." It got real quiet then, super awkward. Even Dave looked uncomfortable, messing with his peas. His girlfriend, Megan, she just stared at her plate. I sat there, fists clenched, my heart pounding, my face burned. A million insults popped into my head, but I didn't say a thing. I just pushed my chair back, got up, and went upstairs. No slamming doors, no drama. I packed quietly like I was letting the air out of a balloon, this life I didn't want anymore. Just clothes, my laptop, toothbrush, nothing special, no note, not even a goodbye. An hour later, I was out the door, duffel bag on my shoulder, and didn't even look back at that house. I'd fought so hard to keep it together. Those first few days were brutal. I crashed on Travis's couch, this guy I barely knew from the bar, but he let me stay without a second thought. After I gave him the short version of my story, I grabbed every extra shift I could, working my tail off, living out of my bag. Crazy thing is, even though things were worse on paper, I felt so much better. Like I'd shed a huge weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. 3 weeks later, I finally got a tiny studio apartment. It was a dump ancient carpet, a fridge that sounded like a jet engine, and a neighbor who drummed at 3 a.m. But it was mine. I signed that lease and wore the key around my neck on a little chain. It wasn't fancy, but for the first time in ages, I had something nobody could control or take from me. The whole time, not a peep from my family. No calls, texts, nothing. Dead silence. Part of me hoped they missed me, wondered how I was doing, but a bigger part knew better. They were probably just glad to be rid of me, honestly. One less mouth to feed, one less bill to pay, someone else to blame for all their mess. Then about a month and a half after I moved, my phone blew up while I was closing the bar. It was Dave, and right away I knew this couldn't be good. Dave never called unless he was fishing for something. Sure enough, I answered, and his voice was a mess. "Eric, man, listen," he blurted out without even a hi. "We're in trouble. Mom and Dad are freaking out. They're gonna lose the house." I leaned against the back wall of the bar, wiping my hands on a towel, and my gut just clenched up. "What's going on?" Dave launched into the whole story about the mortgage. "They're 3 months behind. Mom thought she had it handled, but I guess not." I didn't say a word. I let the silence hang there until Dave, sounding desperate, added, "You used to help out. You could, lend them some money, like before." Like before, when I was secretly giving extra cash to keep them afloat, covering the gaps when Dave's problems always drained the family dry. I was always picking up the pieces while they treated me like I was the problem. A cold wave washed over me. I didn't even raise my voice. I just said real quiet, "Find someone else to mooch off of." There was this pause, like he couldn't believe I'd actually said that. Then he started going off, trying to lay a guilt trip on me, acting like I was ditching them, like I was a monster. But I didn't hang up. I wanted him to hear it. I wanted them all to know what it felt like when the ground they'd always stood on finally gave way. I remember just sitting there at the bar after I hung up, gazing out at the neon signs flickering outside. A weird mix of good and bad feelings just sort of flooded over me. Finally, they were getting what they deserved after all those years of just being awful, and I wasn't gonna be the one to bail them out this time. That house, their house, the one they used to insult me in and kick me out of, was about to be gone. And honestly, I was just getting warmed up. Those next few days were so weird, so quiet. I figured I'd get a bunch of texts, maybe even a phone call from my mom with those fake apologies wrapped up in family comes first talk. But instead, it was like they just vanished. No texts, no messages, nothing. I could picture them all huddled around that old dining room table, probably trying to figure out what to do, finally realizing that the person who always saved them was gone for good. Meanwhile, things were actually starting to look up for me. I wasn't exactly rich, but without having to constantly throw money at their problems, I could breathe a little. I started buying actual food, not just ramen and cereal. I even got a used couch off Facebook and did a little decorating. Nothing crazy, just stuff to make my place feel like it belonged to me. Every time I unlocked my beat-up front door, it felt like I was coming home to something real, something I'd earned. It wasn't a whole lot, but it was honest. Work got crazy busy, actually. My bartending gig turned into being the manager when the old guy finally called it quits. It was a real step up, better pay, and even health insurance, which was awesome. My tech job online kept chugging along, too. I wasn't just scraping by anymore, I was actually building something. But you know how it is with family like mine? They're like vultures. They always come back when things are looking good. It was a downpour one Wednesday, and bam, Dave was at my door. No heads up, nothing. Just pounding on my cheap old door until I opened it, thinking it was probably some neighbor complaining about the stink again. He was a mess drenched, hair plastered to his forehead, that same desperate but arrogant look he gets from Mom. "Eric, man, come on," he started pushing past me. "You can't just leave them like this." I put my arms up, blocking him. "I didn't leave anyone," I said, keeping it cool. "I left a situation where I was treated like garbage. Huge difference." He ran a hand through his sopping hair, all frustrated. "Look, I know they were tough sometimes, but you know Mom. You can't just let them lose the house. It's Dad's too. You owe them." I raised my eyebrow. "Owe them? You lived there rent-free for like a whole year." I laughed, a short, bitter laugh. "I paid rent, bought food, paid half the bills. You didn't." He started to say something, then stopped like he wanted to fight but didn't know where to begin. After a beat, he changed his tune. All right," he said. "Not for them then. Do it for me, please. I promise I'll pay you back. Just help me get through this, okay?" Same old story, just a different spin. How many times had I bailoed him out? How often had I given him money for car troubles, bills, and all those emergencies that always seemed to line up with shows and new shoes? I sighed and shook my head. "You just don't get it, do you?" His face twisted up in a glare. "Get what?" he shot back. "That I'm not your lifeline anymore." A long, heavy silence fell between us. The hall light flickered, making the shadows dance on the walls. "Are you really going to let your own family end up on the streets?" he asked, his voice rising in anger. I didn't budge. "They made it plain as day I never really belonged, just a user, remember?" For a split second, I thought he might actually take a swing at me, his fists balled up, his jaw tight like he was grinding his teeth. But then all the fight left him, and he just slumped there, the rain dripping off him and onto my doormat. "You'll regret this," he mumbled. I took a step back and slowly shut the door on him, clicking the lock shut, firm and final. It wasn't easy. As much as I hated what they did and kept doing, a little piece of me still felt messed up inside. Guilt's a tough habit to break, especially when it's all you've ever known. Look, I kept telling myself they made their own bed. They burned that bridge to the ground. All I did was watch it crumble, and crumble it did. A week later, a group text popped up. Not Mom, not Dave. It was Megan, Dave's ex. Just a fuzzy picture of a foreclosure sign stuck right in my parents' yard. Big red letters screaming final. Underneath, she wrote, "Thought you should know, hope you're doing okay." I just stared at my phone for ages. Then I don't even know why I put it down, sunk back into my old, beat-up armchair and actually smiled. They'd lost the house, and for the first time in a long time, I felt okay. But what happened next? Even I didn't see that coming. At first, I figured that was it. Perfect payback all tied up in a neat little foreclosure package. But if I'd learned anything, it's that my family doesn't do neat. When people like them lose something they think is theirs by right, they don't just accept it. Oh no, they freak out. They panic. They start looking for someone to blame. And for them, me, I was the easiest target. The next round didn't come via texts or calls. It was whispers, stuff I heard through friends of friends, social media posts. I wasn't even tagged, but somehow my well-meaning buddies were sending me screenshots. Mom's posts? They were all about how she was this poor, devastated mom, dumped by her horrible son right when she was supposedly at her lowest. Dave's posts hinted around a betrayal, like family had screwed him over and real family sticks with you. The whole story was so perfectly crafted, so smooth. It just knew how to push those buttons with strangers who had no clue what was really going on. To everyone else, they were the victims, and I was the cold, selfish jerk. I kept telling myself, who cares? Let them run their mouths. I knew the truth and the people who mattered knew it too. But it still got to me. I'd be up late at night in my little place, scrolling through all that stuff, and my chest would just clench up. I thought about firing back, listing every single receipt, every Venmo payment, every bill that had my name on it. I thought about telling everyone how many months I basically starved so Dave wouldn't lose his car. How many times I bit my tongue to keep the peace, which, seemed to be my job alone. But I didn't, because I finally understood something important. They weren't posting for me. It wasn't about an honest conversation. They were just after pity, attention, and a pat on the back from people who only knew their side of the story, and I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of a public freak out. So instead, I just shut up. No replies, no cryptic posts from me. I was really trying to concentrate on my own stuff, on my friends, and just putting my life back together after finally cutting ties with all the drama. But sometimes silence just makes certain people go nuts. It was maybe 2 months after we lost the house that the next thing went down. I was at work sorting out paperwork behind the bar when Travis, who was my boss then, poked his head in. "Hey, man," he said, looking super awkward. Your mom's out front." I just froze. I hadn't seen her or my dad, for that matter, since I just walked out. My gut did that thing where it ties itself up in knots, the kind you get when you know you're in for a fight, whether you want it or not. I stood up real slow. "Did she say what she wants?" Travis rubbed the back of his neck. "Said it was an emergency, she's making a scene." I sighed and went with him. And yep, there she was, planted at the bar, shoulders all stiff, her mouth pressed into that look I knew so well. Her clothes looked all rumpled, and her hair was a mess from the humidity. But her eyes, they were just as sharp and cold as ever. When she saw me, she put on this fake smile, the worst one I'd ever seen. "Eric," she said, loud enough for the few people in the bar to look over. "We need to talk as a family." I didn't move closer, just leaned against the doorway and crossed my arms. "Talk about what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Her face kind of twitched for a second before she got it back under control. "Your father's been sick, stress." The depression. It came after the whole house thing. She shook her head like she was in a play. "He needs help," she said. "We all do," I thought. There it was, that classic guilt trip she'd perfected. The way she knew how to push all my buttons, just like she always did. "And you think I can actually fix that?" I asked, almost laughing. "You owe it to him," she shot back, and the mask slipped a tiny bit. "After everything he's done for you, you lived there rent-free." I stopped her with a little chuckle. "I paid my way, you just never wanted to admit it." Her mouth just opened and closed like a fish out of water. She hadn't expected me to stand up to her like that, not in front of other people, not with an audience. She tried again, dropping her voice. "We just need a little help, to get back on our feet, just for a little while." "Temporary," I repeated with a flat smile, like all the other temporary help I'd given them. Her face got all blotchy and red. "You're really going to abandon your own flesh and blood?" she snapped. I straightened up, took a step forward, and looked right into her eyes. "You abandoned me," I said, my voice quiet but sure. "The night you called me a leech and told me to leave if I had any self-respect. Well, congrats, Mom, I found some." She opened her mouth like she was ready to explode, but I didn't let her. I just turned and walked back toward the office, saying over my shoulder, "You're not welcome here. Don't come back." And this time I didn't. The blowback was right away. More nasty things posted online and more stories spreading about how I was this horrible, heartless person. Dave blew up my phone with a bunch of nasty texts, and I didn't even get past the first line. Even Megan sent a message, saying she was sorry for how everything went down, but then she had the nerve to hint that I should help out with Dad's medical bills, just out of the goodness of my heart. I just let it all go to voicemail. Because here's the real deal with kindness. It's not really kindness when they're trying to make you feel guilty or even threatening you. That's just using you. And for the first time ever, I wasn't going to fall for it. But just when I thought they were finally done, when the craziness was finally over, something else popped up. Something I never saw coming. I learned about the final blow, the way everything seems to go down these days, with a surprise knock at my door. It was a Sunday night, when the whole world just kinda slows down. I had a frozen pizza cooking, the TV was on low, that kind of calm I'd worked so hard for, when suddenly I heard the knock. Honestly, I almost didn't answer. Part of me thought it might be Dave again, trying to make me feel bad one last time. Or maybe my mom, ready to put on another sad show, but it wasn't them. It was a guy in a ratty jacket holding a clipboard, and he flashed a badge at me that made my stomach drop. "Eric Patterson?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, real careful. "I'm Detective Moore. Do you mind if I come in? We just need a few minutes of your time." I slowly stepped aside, my heart just hammering in my chest. So he walks in, checks out my little apartment, then looks me right in the eye. "Let's cut to the chase," he says. Your folks filed a police report 2 weeks back. They say you stole a bunch of money from them. I was floored. What? I stammered. He just nodded, real serious. They claim you were emptying their joint bank account while you were living with them. They've got printouts, screenshots, the whole 9 yards. Enough to start an investigation, apparently. For a second, I couldn't even talk. My brain just froze. Finally, I croaked out, I didn't touch their money. I paid my share, even more than my share sometimes. They were always asking me for cash, not the other way around. Moore studied me for a second, then gave a little nod like he wasn't surprised at all. To be honest, he said, your story makes a lot more sense than theirs. The stuff they showed us is pretty weak. Most of the transactions they pointed to were their spending vacations, home improvements, stuff my name isn't even on. But, he added, we still gotta do what we gotta do. I let out this huge sigh, feeling completely crushed. It wasn't just guilt or humiliation they were aiming for. They were trying to destroy me. Then he says, here's the good part, and pulls a piece of paper from his pad, handing it to me. We're not pressing charges, no case. But he added, you might want to think about protecting yourself from now on. Get a lawyer, keep good records. Some folks don't take being cut off too well. So after he walked out, I just sat there for ages. The pizza in the oven was totally ruined, burnt to a crisp, while I tried to wrap my head around everything. They really tried to take me down. It wasn't about the money that was gone long ago, it was about them hating that I'd escaped and made a life for myself without them. For a few days, I was a zombie. Work, home, stare at the walls. All I could think about was everything I'd given that family, how little it ever mattered to them. Then one night I decided enough was enough. If they wanted to play games, fine, I'd play too, but I'd play by the rules. I started digging up every single receipt, bank statement, every Venmo and PayPal transaction from the past 2 years. I marked every single time I'd sent them money. Rent, bills, the whole shebang. I got it all organized, perfect, even included signed receipts from the landlord proving I'd paid my rent while I lived with them. Then I emailed it all to a lawyer my coworker suggested, this amazing woman, Sheila, she's tough as nails. Sheila looked it over and said, honey, we're going on the attack. Turns out I not only had enough proof I didn't steal anything, I had enough to sue them for trashing my name and causing me so much emotional pain. It took forever and it cost a fortune. I had to use up my savings, work tons of extra hours, cut back on everything. But I was so determined to fight back. It wasn't just about the cash, even though that would have been a sweet bonus. Really, I wanted them to understand they couldn't just go around messing with people's lives and think they could get away with it. When those lawsuit papers landed, I bet the roof practically blew off their little apartment. They were all squeezed into a rental now after they lost the house. At first, they tried to act tough. They said I didn't have a chance. They said the whole thing was a big mix-up, but Sheila was a bulldog. She pulled together everything, the social media stuff, the police report, all the lies they spread, and statements from people at work and friends who saw what they were doing. Little by little, she built this solid case that they couldn't wiggle out of. Once they saw the evidence, their lawyer probably told them to give up. The deal was simple. Either they had to publicly take back everything they said or write an apology admitting they'd been lying. There was also some money involved. It wasn't a fortune, but it covered my lawyer and still left me with some extra cash. I remember being at the lawyer's office reading their apology. It was so formal and fake, obviously written by their lawyer, but it didn't even matter. Seeing their names on that page, owning up to what they did, was better than any amount of money. It felt like finally closing the door on something I should have done a long time before. After the whole thing was over, I blocked them from everything, everywhere. I got a new number, a new apartment, a really nice one this time, hardwood floors and everything, even a balcony where I could soak up the sunrise. It was a fresh start, you know. I made some new friends, real friends, people who liked me for me, not what I could do for them. I finally went back to college, part-time, to get that degree I'd always wanted but kept putting off because I was always cleaning up other people's messes. Life wasn't perfect, but it was my life, completely and totally mine. There are still times I think about them, Mom, Dad, Dave. I wonder what they're up to, if they've changed at all. Maybe they're still blaming me for everything, making up new versions of what happened, playing the victim. But honestly, I sleep just fine because I know the truth. I wasn't the one who was using everyone like they were, and I'm the one who walked away from all that drama for good. For the first time, I'm not just hanging on, trying to meet someone else's expectations. I'm actually living. And no matter how much they lie, no matter how many bridges they burn, they can't touch what I've built. They just can't.